Hello everyone. If you have ever wondered how a small mountain city could rise to command one of the greatest empires in the ancient world, then welcome back. Today, we are stepping into the high Andes to witness the moment everything changed. This is the story of a prince who refused to retreat, a city that refused to fall, and the birth of an empire that would reshape an entire continent. Long before the Incas ruled vast stretches of South America, Cusco was only a regional center, respected but not yet legendary. The royal line was established, but its influence barely extended beyond the surrounding valleys. And in the middle of this fragile balance stood a young prince named Inca Yupanqui. He was not his father's favorite. He was not showered with luxury or praise. Instead, he was overlooked, underestimated, and pushed aside while his brother received every privilege. But fate had other plans. When the Incas, fierce rivals of Cusco, prepared a massive assault, the ruling king Viracocha abandoned the city along with the favored heir. Inca Yupanqui stayed behind. With only a small force and an unbreakable resolve, he chose to defend Cusco rather than watch it be taken. What followed became one of the most celebrated turning points in Inca memory. Legends speak of courage, of unexpected allies, and of a battle that transformed a quiet prince into a national hero. Whether every detail is myth or memory, one truth stands firm: Inca Yupanqui proved himself that day. His victory over the Incas did not just save Cusco, it opened the path for him to become Pachacuti, the earth shaker, the architect of the Inca Empire. And from that moment forward, nothing in the Andes would ever be the same. After securing Cusco and earning his place as the rightful ruler, Pachacuti turned his attention to something far more ambitious than winning battles. He set out to redesign the very structure of Inca society. His vision was not simply to rule, but to build a system so organized and balanced that millions of people could live under one unified state without constant internal conflict. And remarkably, he succeeded. Pachacuti began by transforming Cusco into a planned, symbolic capital. Streets were laid out with intention. Temples, plazas, and noble estates were rebuilt to reflect both political power and spiritual meaning. But the true genius of Pachacuti appeared in how he managed the everyday lives of his people. Instead of relying on currency or tribute payments, the empire functioned through a principle of reciprocity, an ancient Andean concept where support flowed both ways between rulers and subjects. This took shape through the mita, a labor tax that required each household to contribute a few months of work to the state. It might sound harsh through a modern lens, but within the Inca system it was designed to be balanced, predictable, and shared across the population. In return for their labor, common people received protection, food reserves during hard seasons, and access to infrastructure that made life more stable than it had been in centuries of fragmented warfare. Under Pachacuti, this system began to operate at a massive scale. Farmers, weavers, builders, and craftsmen all contributed to the empire's growth. Storehouses filled with supplies, roads expanded across mountains, and Cusco evolved into the beating heart of a rising superpower. Through this careful organization, Pachacuti did not just rule, he reshaped society into a coordinated, interdependent network that could support a rapidly expanding empire. With society stabilized and Cusco transformed into a powerful capital, Pachacuti began shaping something even larger, an empire built on strategy, discipline, and psychological strength. The Incas did not expand through chaos, they expanded through precision. Early in Pachacuti's reign, the empire faced powerful rivals such as the Kalas and the mighty Chimera kingdom on the coast. These enemies held large populations, fortified cities, and generations of regional influence. But Pachacuti understood something crucial: victory did not depend solely on numbers. It depended on preparation, morale, and the ability to unsettle an enemy before the first blow even landed. Inca armies were well organized into units with clear command structures, and they relied heavily on long-range weapons like slings and javelins to disorient opponents. Before a battle even started, Inca forces sometimes used intimidating chants, drums, and bold threats meant to crush enemy confidence. Chronicles describe them shouting fierce warnings, symbolic theatrical, and designed to shake the will of opposing leaders. When diplomacy failed and battle became inevitable, the Incas struck fast. Their soldiers moved in coordinated waves, supported by reserves ready to reinforce weak points or surround enemy lines. Once leaders like the Kala chief Huayna Capac were captured, resistance crumbled. His public execution in Cusco sent a message that spread across the Andes. Resisting the Incas came with consequences. Yet the Incas were not senseless conquerors. If a local ruler surrendered peacefully, he kept his lands, title, and people now woven into the imperial system. This approach allowed the empire to grow quickly while minimizing destruction. Through a combination of psychological pressure, disciplined tactics, and calculated mercy, Pachacuti transformed regional warfare into a tool for building one of the most formidable empires in the pre-modern world. Once military victories expanded Inca territory, the real challenge began. How do you govern a landscape that stretches across deserts, high mountains, rainforests, and valleys? Pachacuti and his successors solved this not with brute force, but with one of the most sophisticated administrative systems ever created in the ancient world. At the heart of Inca governance were storehouses or calcas, built everywhere the empire reached. These structures were filled with food, textiles, tools, weapons, and medicine resources carefully collected through the MIT labor system. They were not simply stockpiles. They were safety nets. During droughts or lean harvests, the state redistributed supplies to keep communities stable. This earned the empire loyalty from many who valued security over independence. But nothing symbolized Inca organization more than their 25,000-mile road network. Were not simple paths, they were paved highways, mountain staircases, rope bridges swinging over deep gorges, and long coastal routes connecting every corner of Tawantinsuyu. Along these roads stood relay stations manned by chasquis, runners whose stamina bordered on unbelievable. Working in shifts, they carried verbal messages and quipus across the empire at staggering speed. An urgent message could travel hundreds of miles in a single day faster than many medieval kingdoms in Europe. And then, there were the quipus, the knotted string records that functioned as administrative data systems. Skilled keepers used color, not type, and position to record census numbers, storehouse inventories, troop counts, and tax obligations. Without a written alphabet, the Incas still managed information with surprising accuracy. Together, these elements formed a highly coordinated machine. Roads moved armies and messages. Quipus captured every essential detail. Storehouses ensured stability. Through this structured network, the Incas did not just rule, they organized a continent with astonishing efficiency. As Pachacuti consolidated power, he understood that an empire is not held together by roads and soldiers alone. To endure, it needed identity, shared beliefs, shared symbols, and a sense of belonging that stretched far beyond Cusco. The Incas built this unity by honoring the ancient cultures that came before them while elevating their own spiritual vision. They saw themselves not as the beginning of something new, but as the inheritors of a much older Andean world. When Inca rulers visited the ruins of Tiwanaku or the vast desert lines of Nazca, they believed these places held divine wisdom. They did not dismiss earlier civilizations. They absorbed them. Temples, stones, abandoned monuments, everything was woven into the Inca story. This respect for ancestry helped them legitimize their rule over regions with long-standing traditions. Religion played a central role. The Incas worshipped Inti, the sun god, as their spiritual father. But they also revered Viracocha, the creator who shaped the world, the mountains, and the stars. Every valley, river, and peak had a spirit, a presence. These sacred places, called huacas, became anchors of Inca spiritual life. By recognizing local gods alongside their own imperial deities, the Incas built a belief system flexible enough to unite diverse peoples. Ethics and social norms reinforced this unity. Family loyalty was paramount. Marriage was encouraged because population growth strengthened the state. Acts like theft, violence, or betrayal were not just crimes, they were violations of cosmic balance. Harmony between people and the natural world was not just encouraged, it was expected. Through this blend of inherited tradition, spiritual authority, and moral structure, the Incas created a cultural identity strong enough to bind millions together. Their empire was not simply conquered, it was believed in, lived in, and carried forward through every ritual, every harvest, and every sunrise over the Andes. With Pachacuti's foundation firmly in place, the next generation carried the empire to heights no one in Cusco could have imagined. His son, Tupac Yupanqui, inherited not only military skill but also a sharp strategic mind. Where his father had unified the heartland, Tupac Yupanqui pushed outward farther, faster, and with an ambition unmatched in Andean history. He first led campaigns north through the rugged Peruvian highlands, then toward the powerful Huayna Empire on the coast. The Huayna possessed advanced irrigation systems, wealthy artisans, and fortified cities, yet Tupac Yupanqui outmaneuvered them. Chronicles describe how Inca scouts built clay models of enemy terrain so generals could plan attacks in astonishing detail. When the Huayna were nearly surrounded, Tupac Yupanqui threatened their water supply, forcing a gradual but decisive surrender. His reach did not stop there. He pushed into Ecuador, battled through forests, and ventured into territories where dozens of languages and cultures overlapped. The Incas adapted by absorbing new types of soldiers: forest bowmen, coastal fighters, desert specialists, turning the imperial army into a diverse, flexible force capable of meeting any environment. Some legends even claim Tupac Yupanqui journeyed across the Pacific after meeting sailors on balsa rafts, returning with exotic goods. Whether myth or reality, the story reflects the spirit of an age defined by bold exploration. After Tupac Yupanqui's reign came Huayna Capac, who shifted the empire's focus from expansion to consolidation. He fortified borders, quelled rebellions, and oversaw a period of prosperity often called the Pax Incaica. Roads, terraces, and cities flourished. Trade, ritual life, and agriculture thrived under a stability not seen in generations. Under these two rulers, Tawantinsuyu, the land of the four quarters, reached its greatest size, stretching thousands of miles across the Andes. For a brief moment, it was one of the world's most orderly and thriving civilizations. Even at its height, the Inca Empire could not escape forces it did not yet understand. After years of stability under Huayna Capac, a silent threat entered the Andes, one that no army could stop. Long before Europeans physically arrived, a deadly epidemic, likely smallpox, spread south from previously contacted regions, moving faster than any messenger on the imperial road system. The disease struck with sudden, devastating force. It claimed thousands, then tens of thousands, reaching even the royal family. Huayna Capac himself fell ill during a northern campaign and died far from Cusco. His designated heir succumbed soon after. In the span of a short time, the empire lost both its ruler and his successor, a blow that shattered political certainty and emotional stability across Tawantinsuyu. And into this void stepped conflict. With no clear line of inheritance, two of Huayna Capac's sons emerged as rivals, Huáscar in Cusco and Atahualpa in the north. Their dispute was not a simple succession argument, it became a brutal and wide-reaching civil war. Provinces were torn between loyalties. Generals chose sides. Armies marched across regions that had not seen large-scale conflict in years. Huáscar attempted to rule with harshness, alienating many nobles. Atahualpa, seasoned in the northern campaigns, rallied experienced soldiers and launched a fierce offensive. The war raged across the Andes, leaving a trail of loss in its wake. Eventually, Atahualpa's forces captured Cusco, imprisoned Huáscar, and executed much of his family. By the time Atahualpa stood victorious, the empire was both triumphant and deeply wounded. Armies were depleted, leadership was fractured, and entire regions were traumatized. At the exact moment Tawantinsuyu needed unity, it had never been more vulnerable, setting the stage for an encounter that would change the Andes forever. As Atahualpa prepared to claim his throne in Cusco, news reached him of strange newcomers, pale-skinned men wearing metal armor. riding unfamiliar animals and carrying weapons unlike anything seen in the Andes. What Atahualpa did not yet realize was that these were Francisco Pizarro and a small but dangerous force of Spanish conquistadors, fewer than 200 men, yet equipped with steel blades, cavalry, gunpowder, and a ruthless determination. When the Spaniards reached Cajamarca, they proposed a meeting with the new Inca ruler. Atahualpa, confident after his victory in the Civil War, agreed. But what he believed would be a diplomatic encounter became one of the most shocking ambushes in world history. After a Spanish friar presented a demand to submit to the King of Spain and the Christian faith, a concept completely foreign to Atahualpa, the emperor set aside the prayer book, confused by its symbols. That gesture gave Pizarro the pretext he needed. Hidden Spanish soldiers opened fire, cavalry charged, and chaos exploded in the plaza. Thousands of unarmed Inca attendants were overwhelmed in minutes. In a stunning turn of events, the Spaniards captured Atahualpa alive. Using the emperor as leverage, they demanded an enormous ransom, a room filled with gold and two with silver. Inca lords complied, transporting priceless artifacts, religious treasures, and fine metalwork from across the empire. Once delivered, the Spaniards melted nearly everything into bars, erasing centuries of artistry. But even after receiving unimaginable wealth, the conquistadors did not release Atahualpa. Fearing his influence and the loyalty he still commanded, they condemned him on fabricated charges and executed him. With his death, the spiritual and political heart of the Inca Empire was dealt a blow from which it would never fully recover. After Atahualpa's execution, the Spaniards pushed toward Cusco, determined to seize the imperial heartland. To legitimize their takeover, they installed Manco Inca, a young prince of royal blood, as a puppet ruler. At first, Manco complied. He hoped cooperation might protect his people. But the conquistadors, especially Pizarro's own brothers, soon revealed their true nature. They seized treasures, mistreated nobles, and even violated members of the royal family. Inca dignity, tradition, and sacred customs were openly trampled. For Manco Inca, this was the breaking point. Secretly, he began rallying generals, messengers, and loyalists across the empire. In 1536, he launched one of the greatest uprisings in the Americas. More than 100,000 Inca warriors surrounded Cusco, trapping fewer than 200 Spaniards inside. Sling stones, arrows, and fire rained down on the city. Inca forces nearly drove the invaders out entirely, and Spanish relief forces were ambushed and destroyed in narrow mountain passes. The siege lasted months, but ultimately the Incas faced challenges. Seasonal agriculture pulled soldiers back home, supply lines were difficult, and the Spaniards received reinforcements. Forced to retreat, Manco Inca led his people deep into the cloud forests, establishing a hidden kingdom at Vilcabamba, the Neo-Inca State. From this jungle stronghold, he waged guerrilla warfare, forming alliances with Amazonian groups and adapting captured Spanish weapons and horses. For years, the Neo-Inca state remained a symbol of resistance. Yet internal betrayal struck a fatal blow. A group of Spaniards, whom Manco had sheltered, murdered him to gain favor with colonial authorities. His successors carried the flame a little longer, but Spanish pressure closed in. By 1572, his son, Tupac Amaru, was captured and executed in Cusco, the final Sapa Inca brought before a grieving crowd. The royal line ended, but the spirit of resistance lived on in the mountains, language, and memory of the Andean people. With the fall of the Neo-Inca state and the execution of Tupac Amaru, the political structure of the Inca Empire was gone, but the story was far from over. In the decades that followed, Spanish colonial rule reshaped life in the Andes in ways that were both transformative and devastating. The Spaniards quickly adapted the Inca labor system to fit their own demands, but without the balance, reciprocity, or protections that once defined MITA. Instead, labor became harsher, longer, and far more dangerous. One of the most infamous examples was the Potosi silver mines, described by observers as a mouth of the underworld. Tens of thousands of indigenous people and later, enslaved Africans were forced into the dark tunnels each year. Many never returned. For over a century, silver from Potosi fueled global economies from Spain to the Ming dynasty, while countless Andean families were torn apart. Disease, overwork, and violence caused a catastrophic population collapse. Nearly half the people of the former empire died within a few decades. Spanish and indigenous chroniclers alike recorded the suffering, with some Spaniards openly condemning the cruelty they witnessed. Yet despite immense hardship, the cultural heart of the Andes survived. The Quechua language continued to be spoken. Andean communities preserved traditions, rituals, agricultural techniques, and stories that had existed long before the Incas and continued long after Spain's arrival. Even the vast network of stone roads remained alive, walked daily by herders, farmers, and families who carried the memory of their ancestors with them. The empire was gone, but its imprint endured in the mountains, in the terraces still carved into hillsides, in the songs and ceremonies, and in the identity of millions who continue to call the Andes home. When we step back and look at the journey of the Inca Empire from a single valley in the Andes to a civilization that mastered mountains, united nations, and built wonders above the clouds, we can see how extraordinary this story truly was. It was an empire shaped by visionaries like Pachacuti, expanded by strategists like Tupac Yupanqui, stabilized by rulers like Huayna Capac, and defended fiercely by leaders such as Manco Inca. It rose through innovation and organization, fell through disease and internal conflict, and endured through the strength and resilience of its people. Even after the armies disappeared and the last Sapa Inca faced his fate, the spirit of Tawantinsuyu never vanished. It lives in the terraces still green with crops, the roads still carved into the mountainsides, and in the Quechua words still spoken across the Andes. The story of the Incas is not only a history of conquest and collapse, it is a testament to human ingenuity, adaptation, and the cultural heartbeat that even centuries of upheaval could not erase. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of the most incredible civilizations the ancient world ever knew. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history and want to explore more mysteries, more cultures, and more forgotten empires, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next story.